Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley, and you're listening to Knightline Extra only on the Knightline Sports Network. That is right. I am Andrew Phegley, coming to you from the 1148 studios, home of the award-winning Knightline Sports Network, winners of the Florida BlogCon's favorite podcast of the year at their 8th annual awards. Thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Have you come down off of that high from the weekend yet? What a miraculous weekend. What a week. From ESPN College Game Day to Lee Corso's pick in full nitro gear to UCF's dominating win over Cincinnati that helped the Knights clinch the American East and will host the December 1st American Championship game. And we like the polls again. UCF is 8th in the AP, 9th in the Coaches Poll, and now 9th in the College Football Playoff Invitational Rankings, the highest ever for a G5 school. And if that wasn't enough, it's USF Hate Week. The War on I-4 is this Friday. In this extra, we'll hear from Macau's insider Trace Trylko hops on the AAC's conference call to talk with Cow's head coach Charlie Strong, and former UCF quarterback Nick Patti goes inside the red zone. Hold on, folks. Here we go.
5 questions with an insider, getting to know this week's opponent.
All right, time to learn more about our friends down I-4. We welcome Chris Torello of Spectrum Sports 360. It's live every night at 10:30 on Spectrum News 13 in the Orlando, Central Florida area. It's also available in Tampa on Spectrum Bay News 9. Chris, thank you very much for joining us on the Knightline Hotline. How you doing?
I'm doing well, getting ready for Friday.
It's a big one.
Yeah, it's going to be a great game, and I think I think a lot of people are underestimating the Bulls, but at the same time, I think any Bulls fan who thinks UCF is ripe for the taking needs to go watch the tape, especially what just happened against Cincy. This UCF team is very good. I don't know if they're as good as last year's UCF team, but they're pretty darn good.
Right on. Well, Friday's game marks a tale of teams going in opposite directions as far as I'm concerned. UCF is 10-0 and has won 23 straight. Meantime, the Southern Floridians are 7-4, having dropped their last 4 games. Why have the wheels fallen off the bus?
I think if you watch this team back in August, I mean, you have to remember Blake Barnett's a graduate transfer. Sure, he gets the playbook in his hands when he comes in late spring, but he doesn't really get practice until August 1. And then you're basically going until your first game against Elon. And, I think for him it was a lot of learn as you go. And I think, the offense looked really good early on at times. I think that game against Georgia Tech was a real statement win. But I just think, they've had some injuries. But to make no excuses, I think they're exactly what I thought they would be. They were going to be a team that had the potential to lose 3 or 4 games, and they've done that. I didn't think they would lose to Tulane. I thought Tulane would give them a run for their money. I thought they had a running quarterback, the style not as good, but certainly good enough to kind of be like a De'Aaron King. But that was embarrassing. I think it was 365 rushing yards in their home turf at Ray J. That's just unacceptable a week after losing to Houston. To give Temple and Cincy credit, they can find coaches. I don't care if it's Steve Adazio, Matt Rule, Luke Fickle and Jeff Collins are both going to be Power 5 coaches. They came as coordinators and position coaches from Power 5s, and they're going to be Power 5 head coaches. That's what Cincy and Temple do so well. Look at Brian Kelly. He was at Cincy. Now look at what he's doing at Notre Dame. Those are 2 programs that you never count them out, especially once they get into the second year of a new coach.
Let's talk a little bit more about the offense and quarterback Blake Barnett. Who are his targets that fans should know on his side of the ball?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think a lot of UCF fans remember the first touchdown of the game. It was a 3-play drive. It ended with a 47-yard touchdown to number 8 Tyree McCants. He dragged a defender into the end zone, and it kind of stunned Spectrum Stadium a little bit. So Tyree McCants is certainly going to be a weapon. They've got other guys. If Randall St. Felix, Stanley Clairvaux, if those guys are good, if a Darnell Solomon is good to go, if Mitch Wilcox, the tight end, is good to go. Everyone remembers him for the fumble last year on that final drive, but Mitch is such a good kid, and he remembers that fumble. I talked with him at the beginning of the season, and he said to me, he goes, it'll live with me forever, but if I ever get a chance to right a wrong, I'll do it. And he's a future NFL tight end. You got Jordan Cronkrite in the backfield, who's a Florida transfer. He actually surpassed the 1,000-yard mark. He's one of a few Bulls to ever do that. They're getting back a young guy in Duran Bell Jr. He actually played at Hillsborough High School over here in the Tampa Bay area. So they've got plenty of weapons. It's just a matter of, can they move to the pace they want? And I'm sure you're on Twitter like I am. A lot of USF fans are sick and tired of the halfback dive, and they want to see some variety. So I think offensive coordinator Sterling Gilbert is going to need to really just let his offense be the offense this week. I mean, Quentin Flowers last year, in some ways, he kind of shrugged off whatever Sterling was throwing at him. And I think, if you're Blake Barnett, who has a sore shoulder, if you're Blake Barnett, if you're this offense, you let Sterling call the plays, but you got to do what you have to do to try and stay with UCF.
All right. So is McCants a senior this year, or?
Yes, he is a senior. There's a lot of seniors. There's a decent number of seniors on this team, but if you look at the key contributors, there's a lot of underclassmen. There's been a roughly 12 to 15 freshmen making an impact. So this is a young team. I know that's an excuse, but there's a lot of young guys on this team. 2019 is going to be good for USF.
Yeah, my point was that we're finally going to be done with McCants. I mean, that's my entire point there. That's all I was going to say is I'm just glad to get rid of that guy. He's an awesome player. He is. I'll give him all that.
And I think that's what's great. No matter what rivalry you're in, that's what's great is when you can say, you know what, I'm glad he's not going to play here anymore, but darn, was he a good player, and I respect him. And I think, it's the same with Mackenzie Milton. I think a lot of USF fans, when his time is done, they'll say, I'm glad he's not playing anymore, but, man, we're going to miss him because he played well. I'm sure UCF fans felt that way about Quentin Flowers.
Absolutely, about Flowers and then Mack as well. I'm glad that both of those guys are gone. Absolutely. That's how it works. Let's talk about the defense a little bit. What do you think about this matchup against UCF?
I think what's interesting about USF is the fact that you have a really senior-laden group, Ronnie Hoggins at corner, Mazzie Wilkins at corner. You've got some older guys like Greg Reeves and Kirk Livingstone, Josh Black as a linebacker. You're missing a guy like Nico Sautel, who's still day-to-day. Seems like he's been day-to-day for a month. So we'll see what happens there. But they've got some good pieces. I don't know if they're going to be able to handle this UCF offense. Not many defenses across the country could. I just think, if you're USF, and I was actually getting ready for this preview article that we're going to have up on our Spectrum News websites on Friday morning, is the fact that in the 10 games UCF has played, I found it interesting. I believe in there's 6 games where they actually did not score a touchdown or score a field goal on their first possession. So they've punted, they've been intercepted. So there is a way to maybe limit UCF right off the get-go. I know one of those games was ECU and McKenzie wasn't playing, but there is a chance to maybe stop UCF in some key moments. And remember, I think last year's team is better than this year's team. So if you're down 21-7 against a better team last year with the likes of Traquan Smith, I just think if you don't want to get down, but I think if you can hang with this UCF team, they've taken some punches this year. UCF hasn't made it easy on themselves at times, and fans have had some heart attacks. So if USF wants to stay in this game, they're going to have to go punch for punch. But if they can go up 7-0, 14-7, if they can kind of say, hey, now you answer us, I think that would be huge. And I think the big crowd, who I expect a lot of UCF fans, but I do think USF fans will hold their own at Ray J.
Well, that was my next question. UCF fans are talking about this being a black and gold Tampa takeover, and even Charlie Strong spoke about it, not wanting the home fans to be outnumbered. What's the buzz around this game in Tampa?
Well, I think you need to put some context onto that quote, because what he said was, he hopes that they don't come over here and take over. But the point of it was for him saying, listen, we still have a really good team here, and I just want our fans to come out and show support. I love the Friday 3:30, 4 o'clock game. I loved it last year in Orlando. I'm loving it this year in Tampa. But I'm sure plenty of fans over here in Tampa are thinking, well, this team's lost 4 in a row. They're getting UCF in here. I can just give my ticket to a UCF buddy driving down I-4 and let him come watch the game. And I think what Charlie Strong and Michael Kelly, the athletic director, are trying to say is, no, keep your tickets, come to the game. This is a huge rivalry. We have to treat it as such. And I think, both teams have been through down moments. UCF was 0-12 not that long ago. USF, people want to sit here and act like 7-4 is 0-11 or something. So, it's really tough when both teams are expecting to do well in back-to-back double-digit win seasons for USF. So I think that's what Charlie was saying. But I'll say this, UCF fans are incredible. They're relentless on Twitter. The UCF Twitter mafia is real, and I love it, and I want to be a godfather to them. And I just really enjoy everything UCF fans have done. Has it been a promotion? Has it been a big PR stunt this last year? Yes, but you know what? Sometimes in order to get attention, you got to keep screaming. And remember, the squeaky wheel always gets the oil. So well done to UCF fans.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you. I would like to think we've been a big part of that. So
absolutely. Yes.
Well, how do you see this one playing out? Is an upset possible in this rivalry game? Any rivalry game, there's always a chance. You can throw out everything else that's happened during the regular season for any rivalry game, as far as I'm concerned.
No, you're absolutely right. And like I said, I think if USF is going to win, and Sterling Gilbert even said this, their offensive coordinator, I think you're just going to have to go toe-to-toe with this offense. And, I'm not to say Randy Shannon in this UCF defense aren't capable of playing really well. We just saw them play well against Cincy, as I mentioned. But I'll say this. I think if USF has any hope, they better win the coin toss. They better take the ball, and they better go score first. And I think if they can keep the momentum, and if they can really just say, you know what, screw it, we have playmakers. Let's go out there and let the chips fall where they may. I think if USF plays with plays reckless, if they just go out and wreak havoc, you know what, this will be a game at least into the third quarter. And I think that would actually be great for all the fans. I think it'd be great for everyone if they could say this was a game. UCF, though, is trying to do something different. They're trying to actually accomplish something. They're trying to make a statement to the College Football Playoff Committee. Unfortunately, they won't be able to do that in these next 2 weeks unless they dominate. I mean dominate. Remember that 64-12 game USF had back when they were fifth in the country in, 2007? I'm not saying that it's going to get that way, but if I'm UCF, I'm looking at a big 50. I'm looking at a 55. I'm looking at 60. I want to make a statement. I want to hurt them, and I want them to hurt them until it hurts no more. I want USF to say, please stop. Then no mas. And I want UCF to go again. I'm saying this as an American Athletic Conference fan. I think if you really want to make your statement and claim Power 6, you better go out there and hang 60 on the Bulls. But if the Bulls can keep this a game, if they only win by 7 or 14, I hate to say it, that ends everything for UCF. Not that I think they're getting in they could get into the playoff, but if they have any hope, they got to blow out USF. I don't think it's a blowout, though. I don't know if 20 points is a blowout, but I mean, if it's 50, you know what? I think I put 55-21. So yeah, I probably did go over 30. So that's a pretty good win, 55-21.
All right. Well, you cover both teams, so this is a little bit weird, asking you and using you like just a pure USF guy. So, and I appreciate that, but you get to see both sides of it very clearly. And that's kind of why, I wanted to have you on here as well, for that insight.
One thing I want to say real quick is both fan bases should be commended because they are the two strongest fan bases in this conference. And I think they're better when both teams are 10-0 or 11-1, whatever. So, I think UCF needs USF and I think USF needs UCF. And one's going to be up, one's going to be down. But if we could ever get what we got last year at Spectrum Stadium, I mean, that's the great. I was on the field when Mikey Hughes scored that touchdown. It's one of the greatest things I've ever seen.
Well, that was one of the greatest games, and I've been playing and watching football for a very, very long time. And literally, that was one of the best games I've ever seen in my life.
I agree with you.
And I don't want that every time we play just because of the heart attacks, but
I know.
But Lord have mercy, it was an awesome game. So, I'm not asking for that again, though.
No, not this time.
Hey, Chris, tell people how they can see your work and follow you on social media.
Sure, I'm on Twitter at Torello Sports. That's Torello Sports. And you can also follow our Spectrum News accounts at MyNews13 as well as at BayNews9, which is BN9. You can follow our Orlando people, Despina Barton, Pat Welter. There's some great people, John Alba. I mean, those just look up those names, and they're over there 24/7 dealing with the UCF Orlando scene. I can only do so much over here in Tampa, but that's what's great about Twitter. Luke Hetrick's another name I keep forgetting. I'm sorry, he's one of our newer guys as well. So it's great that I think Spectrum News, My News 13 in the Central Florida area, we've done a really great job of devoting all the energy to UCF. And, so I hope people take advantage of our reporters reporting and, always give us a follow on Twitter. And we're always happy to have the conversation with people. So, sometimes we may seem like we're saying something to get you riled up, but sometimes, it's probably just to see if someone has an opinion similar to ours or different. So it's always fun. It's always great. We love the UCF crowd. We love the USF fans. And can't wait to see everyone out there at Ray J, and just want to wish everyone a happy and healthy Thanksgiving.
All right, you too. Thank you very much for doing this. You guys do a great job. I'm a big Despina fan, so
there you go.
Over
great.
here,
I love her. I worked with her, so.
Yeah, she does a great job, and you do a great job over there as well. So thank you very much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
All right, immediately following the war on I-4 this week is the return of Knightline Postgame Live. I'll be here live right after the game. Call 407-401-9184, 407-401-9184, live on YouTube. And we take your calls, so be sure to call in, be sure to listen wherever you're at, and we want to hear from you. Also, be sure to check out the all-new NightlineSports.com for Knightline t-shirts, archive episodes, and more. We'll hear from Cows head coach Charlie Strong, and we're talking with former Knight Nick Patti when Knightline Extra continues in just a moment.
Hey, this is Travis Dever, Kai's Real Estate, the Dever team, New Smyrna Beach. Your source for real estate and everything else, New Smyrna Beach. Proud sponsor of Knightline and Knightline Postgame Live. Call me anytime at 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636. Let me show you my hometown, New Smyrna Beach, UCF's favorite beach. Go Knights and charge on.
Spice up your company with homemade marketing services from Tasty Gravy Creative. Tasty Gravy serves up a menu of budget-friendly marketing, graphic design, and public relations services customized to your specific goals. Co-owned by a UCF graduate, Tasty Gravy can help refresh your brand, strengthen your online presence, or reinforce your company's message. Contact Tasty Gravy for help with your website, social media, marketing, advertising materials, and more. Visit tastygravy.com.
As he's done all season, Trace Trylko was on the AAC's coaches conference call and asked Cows head coach Charlie Strong about UCF's success and its impact on the American.
We are joined by Coach Charlie Strong from USF. The Bulls are 7-4 overall, 3-4 in the American Athletic Conference. Bulls played at Temple this past Saturday. Temple won the game 27-17. USF is back at home this Friday. They'll take on UCF at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa. That will be a 4:15 p.m. Eastern start on ESPN. Coach, thank you so much for joining us on the call. If you would just take a minute to tie up the game against Temple, please. And what we expect to see is you're back at home on Friday to face UCF.
Well, just coming off a tough loss and didn't take advantage of the opportunities. And Temple did a good job of just hanging in there. But looking forward to this Friday against UCF. And the thing about them is it's senior night for us, and seniors have done a really good job with this program. And appreciate each one of them. UCF has had 2 outstanding years, 23-game winning streak, playing with a lot of confidence, and we're really excited about the matchup.
We'll take questions for Coach Charlie Strong, please. *1 on your telephone keypad will put you in the queue, and then the operator will introduce you.
We'll go to Trace Trylko, Knightline Sports Network.
Hello, Coach. What do you think the long-term impact is on the American for UCF's success over these past 2 seasons?
Well, it's been great because everyone has seen it, and they've made a ton of statements. They have a 23-game winning streak, and they wouldn't beat Auburn last year in the bowl game. So they've done a really good job, and it's a program that's really getting a lot of attention that they deserve because they have not only outstanding players but outstanding coaches and outstanding administration.
When you looked back at the film from UCF's game Saturday with Cincinnati, did it surprise you the way they performed on defense?
No, they have a really good defense, and they played well. It was a ESPN game day there, so the players will be ready to go play.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
All right, getting you ready for UCF's game in Tampa. We check in with former UCF quarterback Nick Patti in just a minute.
Hey, Night Nation. It's Adam from the Sons of UCF. Be sure to check out our show every Wednesday only on the Knightline Sports Network. Now, back to two guys who probably won't be Cow of the Week nominees, Andrew and Trace.
This segment is brought to you by Scouted, the app where athletes of all ages get exposed, discovered, and recruited. Download for free on the Apple Store or Google Play and get discovered today. Welcome to Inside the Red Zone with Nick, the Wild Knight Patti. All right, please welcome back Nick Patti. Nick, what a weekend. I have dubbed it The Weekend from now on. It's kind of like The Catch that JJ made. Now this is The Weekend.
Oh, for sure. What a weekend. I mean, it was from start to finish, obviously one of the most anticipated weekends in UCF history for rightfully so. A number of positive things this weekend with having game day there and a big conference matchup. We could name them all day. We talked about it, but what a good showing from not only from our team and our squad, but from our fans and from A to Z. Just awesome. A great showing by offense, defense, and special teams at times. And I think it was the best showing we could have put on. We talk about the polls and the voters for a second. Best showing we could have put on for them, for some of the people that maybe haven't had an opportunity to see us a whole lot. In the primetime stage, but also, for our opponents and our team, what a confidence boost. And what a job well done from them and our coaching staff to have those guys as prepared, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But what a weekend, just a phenomenal experience and a big weekend for UCF.
Absolutely. Well, it was a big weekend for you and I as well because we finally got to meet.
Yeah, after all this time, finally got to meet face to face.
That's cool, man. I'm glad that we finally got to because we talk on here. I think we get along really well on here and came to the tailgate. So Night Nation definitely showed up, man. I am so proud of Night Nation for coming out. More people that I knew that live in other parts of the country flew in for this game than any other game that I know of. I mean, that wasn't a bowl game or a conference championship or something like that.
Absolutely.
So
homecoming.
Yeah. Night Nation definitely showed up, did an absolutely wonderful job all day at game day and all that stuff. What a big moment for UCF.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that was huge for us, I think, on a number of fronts. I mean, obviously for the game, I mean, you need that atmosphere, you need that. But for us to be on that stage with game day and that broadcast with the primetime slot and all that good stuff, for them to show up the way they did, man, is huge. And for a number of reasons. One, for that stage, like I talked about, but two, the conferences that are watching that we're bidding for the, and by no means am I trying to talk down on the American Conference. Because obviously, right.
I am.
But for the Big 12 watching and the ACC watching and all these, other voters watching, I mean, Night Nation showed up in a way that was huge for us. I mean, you look at right at the beginning of the game. I mean, you were in the stadium. I was there. One of the loudest atmospheres that I can remember being at as a player or fan. And for them to show up and delay a game, false start. I mean, that was awesome and well induced by the crowd. And I just think, like I said, huge game for our team, well played, but our fans as well. I mean, what a huge showing.
Well, I've been an audio engineer for a long time, and I wish I would have had a decibel meter. But my ears are very, very sensitive, and my ears actually were crackling inside my head during all that noise. So I can only imagine all of that coming down on the field, to those guys. That quarterback had no idea what to do. He's probably never experienced that in his life before. He wanted to call a timeout, but he didn't even know it was too late to call the timeout.
And for the first play of the game, you don't see that very often. For the first play to have a delay and then some false starts, the atmosphere's got to play the biggest role in that. And I just, that's what happened. It was best case.
Yeah, after it happens the first time, of course we're going to get louder and make it happen two more times. So that was even better. I'm not as unhappy with the polls this week as I was in the past. Now, I think one of the things is these people from ESPN, the whole ESPN Game Day crew, the people that were calling the game, Kirk Herbstreit, they've all got to see UCF, a full game of UCF. They've got to see what the fans are like. They've got to see what our stadium's like.
Sure.
And all these voters probably watched this game.
Absolutely.
They may have flipped back and forth between another game that was going on, but I would say the majority of them, for the very first time, actually watched a UCF football game. It showed. It showed in the polls. Because I think that those people finally understand that we're not playing around. We're not just saying things just to say things. We're not claiming things just to claim things. We really believe that, and we believe in our product.
For sure. And I think, too, one, I think it showed in the polls, but two, I think it showed in the commentary. I think it showed. If you watch college, the preview show last week when they put the polls and you listen to Herbstreit and listen to all those Pollock and all those guys, it shows in the commentary where they're talking about them in a different light. Everyone's talking about them to where as if they were, if UCF was in the Big 12 this year, how they would do. They'd beat everyone in the Big 12. Everyone's talking about them with a little more respect because, they've seen it. I think Herbstreit said it best, too. I was fired up last night and listening to him talk when he said, it's not about the 23-game win streak for me. It's about their scheme, their execution, their talent, their speed on the outside. It's about all that. And I think that's huge to hear people talk about UCF in that light because it validates what we're doing. Just like you said, it's not just hogwash that we're talking about, hey, we're the little guy and we deserve and we belong for no reason. It's not just barking. It validates what we're doing. And I think this game, I love the way you put that. It's the first time that all these voters have seen, and it showed. This game gives us that spotlight. People talk about, it's great to be on ESPN, but if you're on ESPN3, you're not exactly getting that exposure. And this is the same argument that the Pac-12 has every year. Same argument that they have when they play these 8:30 games, and over here it's on at 11:30 and nobody sees them. When they have good teams, they bicker and argue that they don't get the exposure. And it's true because no one's watching those games, and they might flick on, but you're not getting the full effect. I think this is a big week for them, for UCF to have had that, and it showed. We talked about it a little in some text exchange where, there's some history that we broke with being the big first group of 5 team to have been. This is the highest rank that we've been. It's also the first time that a group of 5 team has ever jumped a Power 5 team after a win, and that's what we did to Ohio State. And I just think that's huge, and there's a lot of respect there having given from the pollsters.
Well, Herbstreit has changed. He's done a complete 180. He's definitely going the other direction now.
And it could be just from what you said. He's a guy that I truly do believe he does his homework, and he has seen us and
but he hasn't called the game.
He hasn't called the game.
He hasn't gotten to watch it that close.
Exactly. And really dissect and prep for a game like those guys do when they do color, and he had that opportunity this week.
And I completely respect that guy. I've always loved him until he started talking crap on UCF. I loved him until that. He
for sure
is one of the best that there are at doing what he does.
He's educated. He doesn't just talk. He's not a talking head. I think he's educated. I think he knows what he's doing. I have a lot of respect for him because I think he actually has some meat behind what he says, and he believes what he says, and he's got good reasons. He doesn't just say things and leave them there. He gives reasons. He gives validation and all that. And like you said, he was a little down. I was worried this week that he would troll UCF a little bit, and he got a little dicey on game day, but he's certainly changed his tune. And that's hats off to our team, man. They showed up and they did what they needed to do, and that's what you get when you perform that way. You get respect.
And I actually rewatched the game with the sound on just to hear what those guys were saying, and he didn't say one thing that was bad about UCF that entire game, as far as I'm concerned.
Last night, I don't know if you watched the ESPN special.
I saw it after the fact. But.
Yeah, he praised. He sang our praises. He talked about how he thought we could have been higher. in the polls, which I agree with. I'm certainly happy with where we are, but I do agree that we could have maybe snuck up a couple spots. He talked about how well we would match up with a lot of the Big 12 teams. He
with
talked
Oklahoma,
about
he
talked about how we
he
could
said.
Specifically Oklahoma, which is the big question to where, like, okay, well, they're up there in the first couple out, and if we can hang with them, then maybe we should be up there as well. But that could happen with some of the chaos that they were talking about. I mean, there is a scenario where we could be one of the first teams out, and that could be huge. But
I'd be happy being one of the first teams out.
For sure,
to be honest
I think
with you.
that'd be
because we're making progress. If we do it again for some reason, if we win this whole thing out, they have no excuse not to rank us extremely high when the season starts. They have no excuse.
Oh, yeah. And that's been a big Achilles heel this year, is that we started so far back. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
We had a big road to climb. We had a big jump to make. And we've obviously made it. And we're splitting hairs now because we're pretty high, and there's not a whole lot of arguments left. There's a couple, but we're about as high as we can be right now, unless there's some chaos that happens. There is some things that need to happen, and there's a road for us to get higher. But for right now, I think we're pretty close to where we need to be.
Absolutely. And everybody knows that it's rivalry weekend, and there will be some crazy stuff happen. So
absolutely. Say Michigan goes down, and we're ranked ahead of an Ohio State team, and we take care of business, and we're still undefeated. We're ranked ahead of Ohio State, and they beat Michigan. What happens then?
Yep.
That's the stuff, and LSU, and it's only a matter of time before they drop down.
Right.
What happens in an Apple Cup when Washington loses? Washington beats Washington State. I mean, there's a million things that could make it really interesting for UCF to make some jumps, and you just never know.
You never know. That's exactly it. We have to stay positive. There still is some kind of a chance that if the stars align, is what I like to say, if the stars and the planets align, we could be there.
We just need to take care of our business, and that's all we can handle. And the old cliche, control what you can control and see what happens.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the game a little bit last week. What did you think about let's just start with the defense, because they played the best game that they've played all year, for sure. No question.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was extremely impressed with our secondary, our corners specifically. I think I'll talk about the defense in a whole in a second, but our secondary specifically, I think it was a big week for them to really assert themselves on the outside with their receivers, and they were dominant. I really do applaud our defensive scheme when it comes to coverage. I think they played a lot of two-man, which against what Cincinnati does, we talked about a lot of seams, a lot of outside routes, comebacks, a lot of play action, a lot of man beaters. I think what that does is it still puts you in man coverage to where you can let your athletes be athletes, but it gives you help over top. And you're taking your two defensive studs, your two best players on defense, and you're putting them over top. So you're playing man coverage, and you have a safety over top. And so I love that scheme. It lets but what it does is it puts pressure on your guys up front, but it lets them be athletic. And the biggest answer, as dominant as our guys were in the secondary, the biggest answer that we had was our guys up front. They put pressure on the quarterback. They didn't allow the run game to get going, so play action didn't work. I thought they were stout up front. This is as physical as I thought they had been. Our linebackers played very, very well. That quarterback at Cincinnati is extremely athletic, and I think he has a way of turning kind of an awkward run into a 7-yard gain or a 13-yard gain or slipping out of the pocket. And he's a guy that you obviously want to spy, but you can't do that every down. And I just think our defense did a really good job of staying on cue, on staying ahead of the change. We didn't find ourselves in a lot of second and short situations, et cetera. And so I applaud our guys up front. I applaud our defensive line. I applaud our linebackers for stopping them in their tracks and not letting the run game get going. And in turn, put a lot of pressure on their pass game and allowed us to be in a lot of man. And just let those guys play free. And that's what we've been missing all year, is a dominant presence up front. We had that this past weekend. We put pressure on a young quarterback who has a lot of talent, but obviously I just don't think he was exactly ready for that stage to take it all on his shoulders, and our defense showed up.
Yeah, and I think that quarterback will be a guy that we're going to have to deal with for a few years.
Absolutely.
And he's going to be good. He definitely
no doubt.
will
I think
be.
He's extremely athletic, and he has the ability to create, and we saw that a little bit. Like I said, on some of those scrambles, he's got a He could spin it pretty good. He's pretty accurate. I just think his offensive line put him in some tough spots. His receivers, our defensive secondary was huge. His receivers weren't open. He didn't have a whole lot of time to throw, and so, but he's a talent, and I think there's going to be hell to pay with him when he gets comfortable and their offense gets falling. A lot like when they had Gunnar Kiel and when they had some talent on the outside, Tion Green, and they had some studs on offense. They had a gunslinger. They have a scheme and all that can work. He's a good player, but our defense showed up for sure.
So back to like a week or so ago, and I said that I had heard through a source that I have that this defense was trying some different stuff at maybe inopportune times. I don't think they did any of that this week.
I don't either.
I think that
I didn't expect them to.
No.
We talked about that, and I didn't expect this to be the week that they messed around.
Yeah.
And it didn't seem like they did.
But I believe that even more now.
I do too.
I believe that even more, and I talked to the person that told me that, and we both believe it even more.
Yeah,
just because they put their ears back and they just played
for sure.
I'd expected to see that all year, and we saw it in the second half of all these games. We didn't see a complete game of it, and I think that this is the perfect time for them to peak, though. It's
Absolutely,
the perfect time.
No doubt. This is
when the games really matter. This is the time.
They really do. Because listen, you can go 23-0, but if we lose a game this week, nothing's worse than a late loss for any team in the country. I don't care if you're UCF or Michigan or Clemson. Nothing hurts you more than a late season loss. And so, perfect time for our defense to peak. Our offense obviously has a great scheme and they execute well, and we've got some speed and playmakers. But no better time for our defense to peak. And I couldn't agree more about the scheme thing. And I just think they played with some conviction. They played very comfortable. A point I've been wanting to make the last couple of weeks, and you can attest to this and seeing our defense play last year. Our defense last year, the best way I can put it is they just had that swagger. They had swagger. They had excitement. They had the celebrations going. They had all that juice with Jakeem and Jemias and all those guys, and they had an attitude. And I think our defense has been missing that a lot this year. I just don't recognize the same kind of energy, the same kind of enthusiasm. This week I did. Yeah, huge. And
I agree,
I just
100%.
That's huge for a defense. I mean, you look at any good defense. You look at like the Legion of Boom and the Seahawks those years that they were really dominant. They did the same thing. I mean, you just look at these good defenses, and they've got good players and a good scheme, but they have
a perfect example of that would be the Miami defenses, defenses of Randy Shannon.
Yep. Oh yeah. I mean, absolutely. Great idea. Yeah, it's a great point.
It's the perfect guy to have swagger. I mean, he is swagger if you look it up in the dictionary, I think. So
yeah.
I mean, as far as college football defenses go, so he can teach that for sure. I just think some weird stuff has been going on, and I mean, I don't. It's very strange to be doing that in the middle of games, to be trying things, and to just. I don't know. It's one of the weirdest things that I've ever seen, but I honestly believe that was what was going on. So
after seeing it this week and how consistent they were in some of their, just in their scheme, whether it be up front with their over fronts, under fronts, their man coverage, 2-man, all that, they were consistent throughout the whole game.
Right.
And I really do believe
if that is the case, Randy Shannon is a freaking genius.
And there's a lot of people that have very high regards. He's a defensive guru. I mean, he is a defensive mind, and he's got great schemes. But you're not around that long and have those kind of jobs if you're not. You know what I mean? I mean, you don't just get that for being the head coach at Miami. But it's been missing something this year. The defense all year. This week, whatever it is, was here.
And I hope that it carries over to next week and the week after that. Then
and maybe,
a few weeks
it's
after
the
that.
same thing. It's the same thing we've been talking about with Heupel all these weeks, where it's kind of like pop the clutch kind of thing. When are we going to see it all? When are we going to see the wrinkles? When are we going to see everything we know is there? It's been the same thing with the defense. This week, more so than ever, it kind of proves it to us that it's been there. And we do – listen – we're not as talented on defense as we were last year.
No.
I stand by that. Not even close.
No.
However, we do have talent, and we do have guys that are dominant. We do have guys that contributed last year. And And so it's been like, man, when are we going to take that next step? This was that week.
Right, absolutely. And the offense can still pop the clutch a little bit more, like you say.
For sure.
They definitely can. They have. You've seen some different things. Not a lot, but there was a couple different packages that were in there this week. There were a couple plays that were in there that I hadn't seen before that I was kind of like, whoa, okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt.
So,
and they haven't had to.
There's never been one time when they they had to maybe at Memphis, but we played a horrible game that
exactly. And there's weather, and it just wasn't like conducive to say, okay, let's get tricky here. You know what I mean? It hasn't been that back and forth game where it's where you can go to the chalkboard and draw it up and say, okay, we're going to take our shot. That Memphis game wasn't the game where you say, all right, we're going to take our stride here. You know what I mean? And so it might be this week. You never know. I mean, you go and play a USF team in a stadium where there's not a whole lot of energy. There's not, they don't pack that place out ever. And it's a fairly talented team against a good coach in Charlie Strong. And you never know. This could be the week. But I'll tell you, I like our chances when we do need to do that, because I have a lot of faith in Heupel and his ability to scheme an offense and his ability to set things up. And obviously he has the discipline to hold things close to the chest, and he doesn't feel like he needs to show everything every week, because you can run it. You can run out of ideas as an offense throughout a 12, 13 game season, when you're trying to put up 1 million points a game. But his scheme is sustainable, and I think that's the most important thing, that he has a scheme on offense to where you're not afraid to run the ball. You're not afraid to put some pressure on your offensive line, which they have. And I think as long as they can do that and be sustainable, more power to them.
Yeah.
Hold everything in,
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Selfishly, I know the fans think differently, and that's fine. That's what everyone's here for. But as long as we continue to score, they can hand it off as many times as they want.
Yeah. I'm good with it. I'm totally good with it.
Yeah, I know where you stand on that. That's for sure.
All right, let's talk a little bit about McKenzie real quick, and then we'll get on to this week's game. This is going to be a long conversation, I think, which is fine. McKenzie, again, in a really big game, got a little antsy, we'll say. Right. I don't know if it was nerves or just he was so pumped up and ready to go that, he was throwing, some of those short routes, over the guys' heads, and just the first couple series. Anytime you take a hit like that, number one, your bell's going to get rung a little bit. And I was worried. I was worried for one. I was just like, just get up.
I know.
And walk it off. So thank God he got up. But then the next two series were a little shaky. And I don't know if that was because the bell was rung a little bit, or like I've said and we've seen before with the really, really big games, he gets a little nervous.
Sure. And, I call it human nature or whatever it is to put it on him. And I do think there's something there. And whether it's, obviously we know that the guy can't be rattled. He's not someone that you got to worry about him being super,
he's got ice in his veins 99.9% of the time.
Right. I'm betting on him. But there are people that just have that anxiety factor where before a big game or before, and you just can't control it. You might get sick before a game, some guys do, and you might get antsy, and it's not being nervous, it's not being able to execute, but that does happen to some people, and maybe he's one of them. But I think too, you see the start that the offense takes, and the first play of the game's a fumble for 6 for the other team, and then you have a couple overthrows, which has been very uncharacteristic of McKenzie. But you never know if there was a miscommunication because the offense is a little out of sync. You never know if the coaches were a little tight and they're not getting their calls in, so they're not able to communicate. When you're in an atmosphere like that, it was obviously very exciting. You have a huge stop on the first drive for the defense, and then, you have everything's not going exactly right. It all falls on McKenzie, and obviously he wasn't sharp. He was missing some throws. He has the fumble. But as an offense as a whole, when you're not clicking like that, I think we all know who have played where it just kind of trickles down. It's like that adage where you play down to your competition. Well, when the offense isn't clicking, it's like everything can just go wrong without even with one guy, making one mistake, and then everyone is a little out of funk. They obviously, I think the most encouraging thing about our offense is that there was never a question if they were going to bounce back. I think we were all pretty confident. I know I was sick to my stomach there for the first 2 drives or so. But I was very calm in knowing that we were going to bounce back. I think like I said, the encouraging thing of our offense is that they did bounce back in a big way. It didn't faze them. They didn't change what they did. They didn't panic. They come back. McKenzie gets his feet wet. He makes a couple nice balls. What I like what they do is they give him some easy throws to get comfortable and get into the rhythm of the game. They get him some runs. They get, the big, where the game shifted on the offensive side of the ball was when he threw it 4 yards to Adrian Killings, and Adrian Killings takes it, 45 yards for a touchdown. That's where the game changed for McKenzie, and he starts to get sharp and he starts to get comfortable. And so
I think it changed a little bit quicker, a little bit farther back when he hit those 2 across the middle to Snelson. I think that's when
that was huge.
On the
Absolutely.
3rd drive, I think, or the 4th drive, and then it all clicked then, and he was in. So,
and it's just weird as a quarterback to where that little stuff like that. You make one good throw, and boom, you're back in it. You completely forget about what just happened.
It's all about the confidence. I mean, it's all about
it's
confidence.
Like a kicker.
Yeah.
Obviously a much different position than a kicker, but as far as the head game goes,
absolutely. And adrenaline is a very, very powerful drug as well.
100%. I guess it's like a pitcher, like a starting pitcher. You get one strikeout, and boom, you're back in the game. You're on top of the hill. You're on the mountain.
Are you a guy that ever got nervous before games?
I was I'd say I got nervous, but I always felt like a confident nervous.
Did you ever throw up or anything before a game?
No, I was never me. I was never to the point of getting sick or altering.
Because I was one of those guys. Before every game,
those guys for sure.
Before every single game, I would puke.
Yeah, I played with a guy that did that. I mean, it was and he wasn't nervous. He wasn't scared. He performing great in warm-ups, but right before every kickoff, he would go and throw up in the same spot every week.
I've done it on the field, too, to be honest with you. Yeah. I mean...
I always felt butterflies, man, but I was never one of those guys.
Sometimes that adrenaline I'm a medical guy, so adrenaline dumps right into your stomach, and that's what makes you do that.
Right.
So.
And there's a cool... when I played for Coach Peterson, he used to talk about the performance anxiety curve. And it's kind of a bell curve, and they did a study on your anxiety level and your kind of excitement and as it relates to your performance. And he used to say, don't peak too soon. Because there's a direct correlation between how excited you get and how at a certain point you get so excited it affects your play. I just think McKenzie's a guy that he gets fired up, he gets juiced, and then he makes one good throw. He makes, you were probably the guy that you might have gotten sick right before the game, but then you hit someone one time and you're like, okay, I'm in. I'm done. It's gone.
That was it.
Yeah, for sure. But no, it's something to watch, I think, because you made a comment about it, about the Peach Bowl, and obviously there's something there, but the encouraging thing is that it's not like it affects him the whole game.
Right. Well, and it was a lot shorter. If that was the case, It was a lot shorter than it was in the Peach Bowl. So,
right. Absolutely.
I mean, it was only, half of a quarter. It wasn't, a half.
No doubt. Yeah,
I mean, he came out, at the Peach Bowl after halftime and was normal. So
right. Absolutely.
Boy, I'm glad that it wasn't that long.
Right.
And I love the guy. I'm not dogging him. I'm just saying.
And like we both said, man, I'd bet on the guy. I'd take the guy. I have confidence in him. You know, it's just it's funny because the guy's a cool customer, man. It's like nothing can faze him. But no one's shy of anxiety right before a big game like that. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that was just as large of a stage, I think, as the Peach Bowl was last year.
Those guys know what's at stake, not for the team, for the university. They're not dumb to what's at stake there. They're not dumb to all the eyes that are on the school. They're not dumb to all the noise, the outside noise. They may say that they don't listen to the outside noise, but we all know that's just Bill Belichick talk kind of stuff to where they don't care. I mean,
and if you saw, if you saw that interview after the game when he was on TV, he was emotional there too, and held
for
it
sure
really in good check.
And good for them. They should all be emotional.
Absolutely.
Like I talked about last week, this senior class, McKenzie specifically, and this senior class, they got a lot of pride to take in this, and they should be emotional. They should have a chance at some point. I don't think it's right now, but they should have a chance to beat their chest and say, you know what, this is huge, and this is something that deserves respect. This is something that deserves attention. And it was cool. I know exactly what you're talking about with him being a little emotional, and I love it. I think it's time that they deserve a little bit of that.
Yeah, his eyes got kind of teary when he answered one question. That was what I was talking about. But
yeah.
I want this whole thing to carry on.
Yeah.
I want the defense to play like they played during the weekend this Friday.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit. The pesky Cows. Every year, it's a rivalry game. You never, ever, you can throw away anything that happened during the regular season. I don't care if the team is 0-12 and you're 12-0. You go in and play a rivalry game, and anybody could win at any time. It's just like that. The guy that I'm the most worried about, and thank God he's a senior, we won't be seeing him again, is that pesky guy, McCants.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see him graduate. I'll go to his graduation. I want to see him graduate so bad.
Oh, I know. Seriously. I'm with you. Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, it's one of those weeks, I think, anything can happen. But if you look at him from a season standpoint this year, 7-4, they started really hot, had some big wins. They're on a little bit of a down curve right now with, I think it's 4 straight losses.
4 straight losses. The wheels have officially fallen off the bus.
They have fallen off. And if you look at it, very uncharacteristic. So Charlie Strong team, notoriously, he's a defensive guy, and he's another one that's a defensive guru as far as college football goes. He's a guy that's respected around the nation of having a track record of being an awesome defensive mind. And he is. But if you look at their scores this year, I mean, they gave up 38 points to Georgia Tech. They gave up over 40 points to UMass. Cincinnati, they lost to, gave up over 30 points to them. And so if you're looking at it on paper, to where if you're just looking at the schedules and teams they've played and whatever, what have you, for what that's worth, it's obviously a good matchup for UCF. I think they have some talent. They always do. They always have big receivers. They always have a running back that's pretty good. They got a quarterback this year that's really talented. Alabama transfer in that Blake Barnett guy, and he's a stud. Charlie Strong is a great defensive mind. He'll light you up. He always has good secondaries, which I think will be something to watch. This week. Charlie Strong is notoriously has really strong secondaries. He's got really good safeties that are it's very similar to ours, that are kind of the quarterbacks of the defense. He's got DBs that he's not afraid to put in man. They're very athletic, and they put a lot of stress on the linebackers. I don't know exactly what their blitz packages will be. I know that USF is always very athletic on the defensive line. That's just sort of that. I don't know what it's weird how teams take this on even through multiple coaching staffs, but USF is one of those teams that's kind of done that. Even through multiple staffs, they've always had a very athletic defensive line, always had a good running back, and they got big receivers. And so I think this is a week that's huge for our run game. I think this is a week that if we can, they just can't get in a rhythm on offense, meaning USF, and we can't give them an opportunity to get any kind of momentum on offense. We have to win the time possession battle. I think that was something that was huge this past week, even though we put up so many points. And I would have loved to have seen the time of possession arrow and how much time was on both sides, because I think that's a big important number for our team, because we are so quick. And it's a little skewed because we don't take as much time on the offensive side of the ball. But I think that's big this week, to keep the ball out of their hands, not give them an opportunity to get in any kind of rhythm. And one thing that Charlie Strong defenses really hang their hat on is that they can create points on the defensive side of the ball. And that we cannot have that, because if there's one way that you'll see us take a downturn, it's that right there. This past week, first play of the game, that happens. We bounce back. But if you get some interceptions to where McKenzie throws some picks and they can create some points that way, that's one way that the game could turn. Big game for the offensive line. One thing that has turned into a strength of our entire team is our offensive line, which is awesome, which in this scheme with a lot of run game in between the tackles, as we've talked about a lot this year, it's going to be big on the offense side of the ball that our O-line is pretty dominant again this week.
So what are the keys to the game on offense to win this game?
Time possession would be the big thing. I think establish the run, and then I just think the way that typically Charlie Strong likes to get his safeties involved in the game, I think play action and taking the top off the defense is a huge key to the game. I think he's a guy that likes to roll down safeties. He likes to put safeties in the box. He likes to put stress on his linebackers to get on the edge and put pressure on the quarterback. But if you're going to do that, you got to roll your safeties down and get them involved in the box. And so I think for us to put a little bit more play action and go over the top, which is a big thing that Heupel likes to do. I mean, he does that week in and week out. They like to take the top off. And I think a big encouraging thing from this past week is that McKenzie got his touchback on some of those long passes. I mean, and some of that, like we talked about, he was a little shaky a couple weeks ago. He found it again this past week. So on the offensive side of the ball, I think it's that. I think you get involved in play action and take the top off, and you establish the run very, very early and control the time of possession. And then on the defensive side of the ball, we got to get pressure on the quarterback. One thing I've seen watching USF a very little this week, because I try to do everything but watch USF, is Blake Barnett, their quarterback, has an uncanny ability. He's kind of one of those sneaky athletes. He's like a Joe Flacco, if you will, to where you don't think he's that athletic. He's not your typical runner. He's not your guy that's going to light you up in the read option game. But given the opportunity on a 3rd and 7, he'll bang you for 13 yards. Given the opportunity, on a draw play, he'll bang you for 21 yards. And so I think whether you want to spy on, whether you want to do, I think they have to contain the quarterback this week and not allow him to beat them so much through the run. I think they contain him, put some pressure on him in the pass game. I think they'll be okay.
Alrighty. Well, who needs to make a statement on the offense this week? Who would you like to see step up and make some kind of a statement?
I'd like to – I feel like I've said this every week. I'd really love to see them get Michael Kubiale involved much more on a more consistent basis than in the red zone. I'd love to see them get him involved more on 3rd down. I'd love to see them do some, sort of naked rollout passes to him. I'd love to see them get creative and maybe some middle screens, tight end screens. He's a guy that I think is underutilized. Other than in the red zone, I think he's properly utilized, but I think on normal downs. And then this is a great week for Gabe Davis to kind of have a resurgence. This is a huge week for a guy like Otis Anderson to really establish himself as a multi-purpose guy on the offensive side. He's huge for us in the pass game, whether it's in the slot or out of the backfield. Big week for him to be able to be very versatile, take advantage of some of their linebackers who are normally bigger body guys. They're not as athletic. They don't play a whole lot of nickel sets. I mean, they have bigger, unathletic linebackers. And so for Otis to get involved in the slot and make a statement there is huge.
All right. So what about on the defense? Who would you like to see step up and make a statement?
Yeah, I think it's huge for our alluding to my point earlier, it's huge for our defensive ends. And outside linebackers to have a big game. I think it's big that we contain him, to Blake Barnett, the quarterback, to not be as big of a threat in the run, to be able to beat us on some of those unsuspected downs for him to be able to run. So to be able to contain him, keep him in the pocket while still getting pressure on him. I know I'm kind of explaining the perfect storm for a defense. I think that's a big key. So whether they need to spy him or while they can still blitz him and light him up and play that man coverage that worked so well this past week, I think that's a huge key. Is our defensive ends, the Titus Davis of the world, for our outside linebackers, it's huge.
It looks like we're a 14-point favorite right now. So. Yeah. And they're giving the matchup predictor on ESPN.com, which I love to look at because it shows it in percentages. They're giving the Cows a 15.5 chance to win.
Jeez, I love it.
I do too. I love it.
I love it. I wish it was a single-digit number for them, but whatever. I'll take it.
I wish it was like a 2% chance. That'd be awesome.
Right?
But
I wish it was like 8% or something like that. But no, I'll take it. I like our guys, man. I'd take them. After last week, I'd take them against anybody in the country. Right now.
I would too.
With a grain of salt.
Yeah, I would. But, absolutely. Yeah. All right, well, it's a rivalry game, so anything can happen. Know. We just have to remember that.
A huge game, too. I think it needs to be said that, there's a lot of weeks that teams get an opportunity and they really show up on it. They take advantage of their opportunity. And UCF certainly did that last week, but it's just as important we show up this week as well. And we can't blunder that. We can't make it just we were like a one pump chump. I mean, we need to show up this week and really solidify that it's not a fluke. We weren't just running off excitement. We weren't running off adrenaline, that we're for real. This is a perfect week to do that against, they're not a great USF team, but it is a rivalry, and we can make a statement by, kind of crushing them this week. And I think it's big week.
Absolutely. All right, Nick, this has been kind of a long one. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No doubt.
Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
Absolutely.
And,
thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Big week, USF week. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody and you and your family as well. Thanks.
All right, we got a couple more of these, so we'll talk to you next week.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
All right, all of us in Knight Nation are looking for a comfortable win in Tampa. No need for a repeat of last season's thrilling 49-42 UCF victory. A win would move UCF to 11-0, a perfect regular season under first-year head coach Josh Heupel, and the Knights have already clinched the American East and will host the championship game on December 1st. Another home game. UCF would love to keep that War on I-4 trophy another season and pick up some more points in the season-long competition as well. Here's what you need to do before Friday's 4:15 kickoff in a game that's airing on ESPN. Listen to Knightline 171 as we relive game day and UCF's win over Cincinnati. It was a packed show featuring Knightline exclusives with Brandon Marshall, Drew Brees, and Asante Samuel. Plus, your War on I-4 game prep continues with the latest episode of the Sons of UCF. Trace will be in the press box in Tampa, no doubt, tweeting up a storm at UCF_Knightline. Plus, he'll have post-game sound that we'll talk about on Sunday on Knightline 172. And I'll be here in the 1148 studios for Knightline post-game live. Please call and talk about the game and or listen on your drive home. For Trace Trylko, I'm Andrew Phegley. Again, have a safe and happy Thanksgiving, and we are so grateful for your support. Thanks for listening to Knightline Extra. Talk with you on Knightline Postgame Live. Go Knights, charge on, and gobble gobble.